Ellen, that we're Well, I don't have one.
Just
got 17 people up there.
We're gonna have to go, so we'll have to work on that later. What you're gonna see, Mark, is whoever's talking is who you're gonna see.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yep, so, all right, but it is 6, so Rob, if you want to put us live, and Mark, as soon as he does that, and we're up to 8 people watching, so. I don't have one.
There's 17 people up there.
We're gonna have to go. Whoever has the YouTube on, please turn it down. That's what we're all hearing.
Okay.
Okay, Mark.
All right,
Ready?
I'm ready. I'd like to call the April 28th regular Edison School District meeting to order. Could we have roll call in?
Mr. Music,
Here.
Mr. McCleister,
Here.
Mr. Betts,
Here.
Mr. Whitaker. You have to unmute, Jeff.
Hit Control D, and it should activate your mic.
How's that?
That's it.
There you go.
All
Here,
right. I'm here.
and Mr. Suhanic.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay. Not sure how we're going to do this, but we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
The flag is behind me, everybody.
All right.
You usually keep that in your mouth?
I brought it in just for the meeting.
Oh, good job. Well, I'm standing.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
Republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're not having any public comment, I would take it tonight. So superintendent's report.
Okay, I'm gonna do a little different than normal. I've asked the administrator to join us to begin the meeting, so that if you have any questions that you have for them and with everything that's going on, they'll be able to help answer those. I'll go through, I'm gonna start though, and administrators, please feel free to jump in. I had a bunch of questions emailed to me between board members and others that I'll just start with those and then we can work from there. So that's with our COVID-19 plan. First question was, what have we been doing about attendance and participation rate for online instruction over the past month? Is the district under any reporting requirements per ODE as the e-learning schools have been? And what are the implications for the blended learning in the future? Obviously, we're not able to take attendance as we normally would here in school. The teachers and the principals do monitor the kids that are participating, and they have been reaching out to them, trying to get them to participate, finding out if there are issues that are keeping them from participating and trying to get them to participate. We do not need to report it as we normally would. The ODE has made some changes for just during this pandemic so that we don't have to worry about that and the laws, although they want us to continue to pursue the laws as we had prior to. So any children that were truant before that, we're continuing to do that now. But there really isn't the absentee reporting as we're used to. As far as what are the implications for the future if we were to have to continue this, in a couple of meetings that I've been a part of, I've been told that they are looking at giving us guidance for next year if we have to continue on in this mode. So it's one of those questions that there just isn't an answer to yet. So any questions, or if any of the administrators would like to add in on that with that question?
I had a question. I don't know if this is one of your questions you're going to refer to, but I was asked about some school districts are still grading as normal and some are grading as like just pass fail. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Were you gonna address that?
It is one of the ones that I had, but we'll go ahead and talk about it now since you asked, Matt. Right now, we are with the upper grades, absolutely, we are still continuing to give grades. We are not doing the pass fail. We want to make certain that everybody understands that the education is important. And we want everybody to do the best they can. Now, we have also talked, and Mr. Smith and Mr. Goodwin can jump in at any time if they want. They don't have to. About for the fourth quarter, they were going to meet with their staff just to discuss some options. I think you guys had your meetings with your staff today. So I will share what we had talked about, but I'm not sure what they had agreed to with their staff today yet. And that's just, we were debating, will we still count the grades as we always have, just everything is the same as normal? Or a lot of what we've talked about is maybe doing something to the effect of, what you do in the fourth quarter can help raise your grade, but not lower your grade. Is that correct in the way I say that, Mr. Smith and Mr. Goodwin?
Well, we had talked about averaging the four quarters together to determine the student's fourth quarter grade. Then that fourth quarter grade would be averaged with the third quarter grade to get the semester grade. So we still, the first option would be, as always, that the student gets the grade they earned. But if there are circumstances, fourth quarter contributed to them perhaps not performing as well as normal, by averaging them across four quarters, that's a true reflection of what they did throughout the year.
Does that answer your question, Mr. McLeister? Somewhat?
Yeah, I think this question has been going around the state really, and I mean, some of the concern is it's not equal. It's not equal. You know, some kids have more advantages at home than others. I mean, is what it comes down to. So I just wondered what we were doing, you know, how we were handling that. And that answers my question, yes.
And it's a tough question. Like I said, we want to make sure everybody understands that we're still educating and we expect people to do things, and we don't want everybody to just, we don't have to do it. So it's been tough, but we certainly understand what you're saying, because it certainly is different depending on if you have internet and high-speed internet, what you can do first of all. And that's been one of our other issues, which we'll talk about here in a little while. So, okay, I'm sorry. Have there been any issues with instruction over the internet? If so, what has been the nature of the problems, and have they been resolved? And do we have the capacity for this type of instruction going forward? I think our immediate issues that we had to begin with were just making certain that all of our students had devices and internet at home. And I just have to give a big shout out to Mr. Lasivita and Mr. Lacanis and Mr. Stanfield and everybody else. They really stepped up, reaching out to families. They got devices in the hands of all the kids that we needed. We weren't able to give every kid one, but every family has devices if they didn't have one. And we also worked with helping them find internet, either through the internet providers that were offering free internet, or I got to give Zach Rosbert credit at the library. He reached out to us and asked if we had any students who would need hotspots. And he worked with Jason and Rob and Dean to get those kids the hotspots that the library had. So they really helped us get internet out to some of the students that would not have had it. But as of now, and those gentlemen, if they want to correct me, but as far as we know, everybody has devices and has hotspots or internet access in the district, correct? I got a thumbs up from Jason, so, okay. Can we continue to do this moving forward if we have to? I think a big question to that is, what will the internet providers do? Will they continue to provide free internet access for families that don't have it? I mean, that's an issue that we may have to address if we have to continue to do this in the future. I know, talking to some of the other districts, they've purchased hotspots to be prepared for that, but some of them needed hotspots this spring too. So we already began to discuss that as an administrative team, where we may need to purchase some hotspots just in case we need to continue with this and the internet companies do not provide it. We will pay for them, but you don't have to pay for the service until you activate it. So, but just to be prepared, we're looking at that in case we need them in the fall.
Tom, does that also include additional Chromebooks?
We've talked about needing, our tech committee, which is Rob, Jason, Dean, and myself have talked about the need to get some new Chromebooks, which we would have anyway. I mean, that's a yearly purchase, but we certainly have talked about needing to get more, especially if we really think we're going to be doing this in the future. So, but yes, the short answer is yes. So, has the array of lessons Edison teachers have prepared? What is the ratio of face-to-face instruction for non-contact assignments? And how viable, efficacious is the type of instruction for the future? I know that Jason sent out something to the board members to answer that question last week. I wanted to bring it up in case any of you had any questions about that, or if Jason would like to add to that, but I know he sent something out that showed you a lot of what the teachers are doing already, so.
Well,
I would just say that it's evolving. A lot of I think teachers have figured out that they have to connect with the kids through video, whether it's live meets, which Google has provided to us right now for free. That's one of those things that we might not get the unlimited access to it next year, like we do this year, but having the Google meetings, and I know some of the teachers are using Zoom as well, more at the high school. And they're also learning a lot about how to use the screen recording feature that Rob, we pushed it out to all the teachers and did a little bit of a training on it for screencasting and doing tutorials and going through assignments. We just did a online survey or remote learning survey for the parents, and it did come back. A lot of the answers where the teachers were asking, what they liked, and that was, and then what they want to see more of is they do want to see more of the teachers telling the kids how to do things and direct instruction, which that's the best thing in classrooms, and it's the best thing online, and that's what we have to really hit on. If we go into this again next year, we're going to have more time to prepare for that, and to have the teachers doing that. A lot of this stuff wasn't truly available prior to this lockdown. The screencasting was there, and Google Meets weren't free. So a lot of this stuff has really jumped exponentially as far as how we're able to do it. So I would say that we're going to see a lot more of that. I hope to see a lot more of that in the future.
Yeah, and this is something we can focus our training on. I mean, just like Jason said, we had no preparation for this. I mean, we did this, and the teachers have done all of this and made an amazing adjustment with this, but with no training. I mean, we have had no professional development focused specifically on intense online training like this. So for them to adjust that quickly, and again, I think Mr. Ross said it, hats off to Rob and Jason for the amount of work they did to make sure all this was put together. And it's gone well, and we'll provide more PD through the summer, and we'll be even better prepared for additional online training as we move forward.
And I would just say some of the stuff like the tech integration that does work in the regular classroom, the teachers, the more places that you try to get kids to go to online, the more difficult it is sometimes to get them to complete assignments. So a lot of success is trying to make things simple for the parents and for the kids, and staying within Google Classroom and making it as simple as possible. And we did get feedback, about trying to be consistent with that. That's one of the other things we want to really, really work on with the teachers.
One of the things I was interested in was the number of times a week different teachers are actually doing what we're doing, actually having conversations with their students. I've talked with some students, just random students, and depending on the grade level and the teachers involved, it seems to vary. Some are meeting once a week, some are meeting twice a week. And there's intervening assignments that students are working on. So I was just trying to get a handle on, how we're, and it's all tied together with the question we had earlier about participation and the attendance kind of notion. How much is actually, how much interaction is taking place? How much learning actually is what we're trying to get at. That's what I was interested in.
And I think your comment was exactly what it is, Mr. Muthig. It's different levels and different levels of comfort for the teachers as they got thrown into this has made a difference. And if some are doing it every day, they're meeting like their regular class would, and others that are learning it a little more have been more of the once a week type thing, get the lesson out and then be there to answer questions online individually with students. But I think that goes back to what Jason and Dean were saying, that we'll offer PD. We'll try to get everybody comfortable with this so that we can have more of what we're doing right here if we have to continue this on into the fall. So it's going to be a comfort level thing as part of it. So
a related question. Do we have any feedback from families with multiple students and conflicts with trying to get on? Or each student have a Chromebook or some other device that they can be on there simultaneously?
There was bits of from the survey where it came in that planning of assignments and having some difficulty being able to meet all the time, that did come up. So again, we're going to share the survey. Right now we have 222 people that have filled it out. Mr. Roth's going to do a one call, I believe, tomorrow to direct the rest of the parents to our website to fill out that survey, which will give us a lot more information. But yeah, Bill, there are some families that are struggling with multiple kids and multiple grade levels and multiple meetings. And I know Mr. Goodwin even had to kind of address that at the high school where you have kids that are in, different classes. They have to make sure they schedule their meetings apart from one another with math and history and science and that because of different grade levels being in the same class, the same classes, where at the middle school, 4th grade is just with 4th grade, 5th grade is just with 5th grade. So there are a lot of conflicts with regards to meeting at the same time every day.
Thank you.
And the issue is not just with the devices, it's with the internet at the houses. And sharing bandwidth and everything. And I speak from my own experience where I have 2 at home from college who are trying to do their online classes from college. And I get booted to the Wi-Fi in the kitchen and it doesn't work as well for me. So that's why I come to work and I can do it. I can make sure I can be on. But so it's not just devices, it's the internet access also. Okay, this one is a big question, and I think Mrs. Arnold is going to talk about this during her portion of the agenda, or we can all talk about it now. So, Ann, please feel free to jump in. And that is, what cost savings have occurred or additional expenses that have been incurred, and can we anticipate any implications for budgeting going forward? The answer is, yes, there have been some savings. We don't have dollar amounts at this point. I know that Mrs. Arnold was working on that in the treasurer's office with some of her staff. But some of the areas where we certainly are going to see some savings because of the closure are utilities, fuel, the pay for our bus drivers that are not doing all the extracurricular driving this spring. Although they're getting their regular pay, they're not getting that extra pay they would have for driving to sporting events and other extracurricular activities. And obviously we have not had the substitute costs that we would normally have. So those are some of the biggest things where we're going to see some savings.
And Tom, I will jump in there for a minute if that's okay. Some of what we've done, I had Pepper run the report from July of 18 to March of 19 and compare it to the end of March of 19, And then for that same period now, and right now we're not seeing a lot of savings, especially on like the electric and that kind of thing, because we were only really closed 2 weeks of that time. And actually for part of it, there were still people in the buildings that I think that first, I can't remember when we closed that off, but like the 17th or whatever. So we still had people there. So next month, I want to do a comparison because I think it'll be a little bit more information. But one of the ones that stands out is Wixie, we had paid $96,191 to for the same period last year. And this year we've up to that, we've only paid $83,000. So that was a big savings. Whose dog is going crazy? And then some of the things like we cut back our trash pickup instead of 2 days a week, only to 1 day a week. But like, I don't see that savings quite yet because we haven't hit that billing cycle. I think that was probably an admin meeting that we were in, and we got notice from the Village of Milan that our water usage had doubled, if I'm correct on that, Bob.
Right.
And we were...
It was that last week before we actually closed that we believe the hand washing had like tripled.
Yeah.
And our water usage had increased. And so we monitored that 3 days a week for 2 weeks. And our water rate substantially went down, of course, once we brought the students out.
Yeah.
You know, so we were back to normal initially, but it just goes to show you, you know, right away that, I mean, our soap consumption and everything like tripled, but it was just part of the trend of everything.
Mm-hmm. So we have seen, like in our phone bills, we have seen a little bit of savings from 8,200 down to 7,500 on the one bill, and then the AT&T is a couple $100 less. Bay Area gas is about $2,000 less. Columbia Gas is just about break even right now. And then bus fuel, that I want to look at as we get closer based on when those bills are coming in. So next month, I think will be a better picture.
I would think our natural gas has gone down substantially too over, 6 weeks or whatever, because, Tom and I agreed that shutting off the boilers,
Well, right now we're only $200 less, but that we do that too through our Bay Area Gas Consortium. And I did get an email the other day that they are going to issue a rebate. We don't know what that amount is yet, but they are going to issue a rebate to the districts as part of that consortium. So we'll get some money back from that too. And that I have a feeling will probably be somewhat significant too. So, but we are definitely monitoring that. And like I said, it's just not a clear picture right now based on it not only being 2 weeks so far, but the sub cost was kind of amazing to me at this point. So.
No.
So maybe a quick question kind of jogged my thought process when you're talking about a reduction in sub costs. So what do we do now if we were to have a teacher that ended up coming down with COVID-19 or something like that and ended up being out for a couple of weeks? Because in a normal classroom environment, they have sub packets and that sort of thing. How do we handle that today?
We would still be able to get a substitute for them if we needed to. So, and that's been a conversation. Some districts are doing that, have that plan, which I think is what we would do. Others have said they'll just split the kids like they would if they were in the building and didn't have enough subs. But I think we've got some good subs that we've used for years that know our kids, know what the teachers would be expecting, and that would be the route I would go. Hopefully we won't have to learn that, but.
Okay.
Moving on with that question, because that was just the first part. Now, as far as the new costs that have been incurred, we're not really seeing them now. We didn't have time to do a lot of professional development. I know that was a specific question I was asked. So at this point, it hasn't happened. But I think going forward, it's going to, as we need to really focus on getting everyone trained. They've done a great job jumping into doing this online teaching overnight, but we certainly have the ability to help everybody get better at it through professional development. So I see that as a cost that we may have in the near future. We do anticipate, as much as we're seeing savings in the substitute realm, we have those issues within our contract about people getting paid for not using some of their leave. Well, obviously, they're not here now to use their leave at the end of the year, so we'll probably see a bump in paying out for people not using leave throughout the year. Implications for budgeting, and this we could probably talk forever, but a lot of it's, I shouldn't say a lot of it's speculation, but we just don't know for certain. But I know at a lot of the meetings that Ann and I have been on that are statewide over the past week or two, we are hearing a lot of anticipate budget cuts. And we're hearing anywhere up to 20%. I mean, if you've listened to the governor, he's told all departments that they need to budget to cut their budgets by 20%. And obviously, the Department of Education has the largest budget in the state of Ohio. So for us to think that we are not going to see cuts is not being very responsible, because we really are truly anticipating seeing cuts in the budget. What those are going to be, we don't know at this point. And I know we're in the middle of the biennial budget, but we've still been told anticipated for next year, even though we were told what we would be getting. We're anticipating some cuts. We're also worried about parents that may not send their children back if we come back in the fall, because they're afraid to send their kids to school. I was reading an article that Jason had forwarded me yesterday, and it referenced Denmark, who has already started going back to school. And they have a a Facebook page where they have 40,000 parents that basically have said, I'm not sending my kid back. So if we lose kids that way, that's funding. And then also when we start talking about social distancing, and I don't want anybody to worry when I say this because it's not our intention, but I just want you to know everything that we're talking about is if we've got to make sure we're socially distancing in the buildings, what about open enrolled kids? I mean, we're bringing kids in that we don't have to. Now, granted, we lose some to other districts too, and it would be a back and forth, but that's a cost too. So we certainly are seeing, we're concerned about budget cuts. Now, once again, I want to stress to everybody, I'm not saying we're not taking open enrolled kids, because some other superintendents, when I said that to them, they just about lost it. It's not our intention. We want to have the kids here. So, but I just want to lay out all those potential problems that we might have. So, but I mean, those are just a lot of things that we're going to have to wait and see. Unfortunately, a lot of the questions are wait and see at this point. But we truly are expecting less income next year. So we're really going to have to start looking at what we're spending also. Ann and I have already started talking about things, potential. We talked with our attorney about some things today too that I won't go into at this point. So, all right, enough about the negative there. Let's move on and hopefully get some positive. This question was sort of asked the student response to online instruction. We've sent out a survey to parents that we're getting the responses back from. We're planning to do a survey to our teachers and to our students later. So we'll have better information on that later. I know you may have a little bit of feedback. Those of you who've been working with the teachers and the kids, if you want to share, if any of I know some of the children love it. They love being at home and being able to do this virtually. And others absolutely hate it because a lot of it's because they're missing the socialization part of being with their friends, but they also thrive on that classroom structure. So it's a mixed bag, just like anything else, but we should have better data and actual comments from the kids in the near future for you. Principals or Jason or Dean, anything else on that you've heard from any kid you want to speak to? Okay. What have been the additional demands on the teaching staff time? can these demands be continued in the future, or do we need to look at different staffing arrangements or instructional approaches? Almost to a T, every teacher that I've spoken to, including my siblings who teach, say this is they're putting in many more hours doing this than they do when they're at school. And I think a lot of that is because they're also learning it as they go. But they absolutely have been putting in a lot more time. And I've had them talk to me about feeling guilty that they're not with the kids. So they will be at 11 o'clock at night up answering emails and things that they normally wouldn't have, just because they're missing the kids and they feel they got to be there for them 24/7. So there definitely have been a lot of demands between the learning, the online teaching, and just being the 24/7 that it's been. Can we continue with these demands? I don't know that we have a choice, honestly. I mean, I don't mean to seem flip about it, but it's going to be what the governor makes us do. So we're going to have to find a way to make certain that we can continue with the demands. And that may mean that we need to look at some things that we do differently. I mean, it may affect the staffing in a way that we can get more help with the online stuff, just to make certain that everything goes smoothly, both for our students and for our children. So the kids are struggling with it too at times. One of the high school teachers forwarded some information that she had received. She asked the kids a couple of questions yesterday. I guess it goes back to the last question. And they really miss being in school. And they're struggling socially and they're struggling emotionally with this too. So those are some things we've talked about social emotional needs for 2-3 years now and how those are increasing. This is certainly going to affect that too. So, I mean, but ultimately we're going to have to continue doing it. It's just a matter of helping everybody learn and adapt to it. Hopefully only through the rest of this year, but we will all see. Have there been what have the impacts on non-licensed staff members been, and how are they being utilized, and what will happen if there is a future shutdown? Our classified staff members have been doing a lot through the thing, and I had written myself a note just so I wouldn't forget this. First and foremost, I want to make certain to give kudos, for lack of a better way of saying it, to Shelley and her cafeteria staff. They have stepped up from day one. They have been here through the whole shutdown, making certain that our students are fed. They've been here almost every day since this began, either serving food or packing food or ordering food. And I cannot give them enough praise. They have done it without complaining, at least not complaining to me. So, but they've been real troopers, and they have made certain that our kids get fed, and we appreciate that. Our bus drivers have started helping deliver food. As you know, after spring break, we went to an option of delivering food too, because we were afraid that some of our students were not getting fed because no one could get here to get the food. So once again, Shelley came to me and asked me if we could do that. She and Rita worked together to make sure it got done. So our transportation department has been helping deliver food. Our classroom aides have been helping online with the students for a big portion of it. And I know that some of them reach out to the kids, especially our special needs aides, because those children really miss them, and they've made sure to help them with the social emotional part. So they've reached out to them individually. And we've started to have them participate in some professional development to help them improve as we're going through this difficult time too. So that is what we're doing with our non-classified, non-certified staff. So did we lose John? Oh, he popped up down here. Okay.
I'm back.
That's fine. I saw your name pop up. I meant to say, we have to remember, if we lose any board members, we have to wait until they log back in. That's just to meet the law. So, okay, we talked about grades already. The question about was how can we advance students if they don't do their work? And I know I responded to the board members about this yesterday. And it's the same as if they're in school. I mean, our teachers are doing everything they can. The principals are helping, But we have kids during a regular school year that don't do their work all the time. And we do everything we can to help them get their work done, make certain that they're at grade level. And if they're not at grade level, then we will look at a retention just like we would in any other year. But a lot of it is based on making certain they're at their grade level. But like I said yesterday, and once again, not to sound flip about it, but this is really the same thing we go through when they're in school too. It's nothing new. So. All right, this is a big one that Mr. Goodwin and I were talking about this afternoon, and the answer has changed. Well, I don't know that the answer has changed, but it's a different conversation than when I sent this out to you yesterday. What options do we have for graduation? Well, I responded to you all that last Thursday, ODE sent out I don't even want to call it a recommendation. They told us that we should have virtual graduations. They did not want us trying to do live events because we wouldn't be able to social distance and keeping everybody following the rules. And they didn't want one district being pitted against another. And I have to say, I've been very supportive. I think the governor is doing a great job through all this. However, today, and I'm not saying however because I'm disagreeing with it, but today, if you listen to him talk, and he said it on a radio show earlier in the day, he said that if schools can socially distance, that we could have live graduations. So we are sort of in a conundrum right now. Mr. Goodwin and I talked about it this afternoon. And basically, at this point, we're going to have to wait and see what the true guidance is because we have the Department of Education saying one thing and the governor saying another thing. Now, I will say that Mr. Goodwin and Mrs. Brown and Miss Spademan have been working on different options for graduation from the beginning. We had it all laid out for the potential of what we could do if we could do a live graduation. We have it laid out what we can do for a virtual graduation. But obviously last Thursday, we just dropped the thought of the one at the stadium and focused solely on the virtual one. But hopefully I'll have a better answer. But right now we're just waiting to see what the true clarification is because we thought we had it as of last Thursday, and I don't know if it really changed today or not, but we're going to have to wait and see because the governor did say he would have to talk to the state superintendent at the end of the conference, at the end of his press conference today to make sure they're on the same page, basically. So unfortunately, I thought I had an answer for you because there are so few answers that are solid right now and going on. And I guess it just shows how everything's going. Everything changes day to day. So stay tuned. We will move on. With that question, though, I did get a phone call from the newspaper today asking me if we were going to continue on with our senior parade this coming Saturday. And at first I told Caitlin that we would talk about it tonight, and we certainly can. But after I thought about it, we're going to make sure that the kids are socially distant. There's only going to be allowed to be one child per car. And I shouldn't say child, they're 8, 17, 18. They get upset with me when I call them children, but they're still children to me. Unless they're siblings or they live in the same household. So and that's been worked out with the health department and the local authorities. So yes, Saturday, we're going to continue on with that senior parade. It's going to start at the high school at 5 o'clock, correct, Mr. Goodwin? Oh, no, you're muted. You're muted, okay.
Yeah, they're going to start lining up at the high school at 5:30, and they'll probably leave the high school lot around 6 o'clock, head to Milan, and then to Berlin Heights, and then they'll go home.
So we will do that on Saturday afternoon. So if you have a chance, socially distancing yourselves, I encourage you to be on 113 because I think in the villages, you're going to have a lot more people. But if you got to be in the village and do it, just stay 6 feet apart from everybody else. But it has been cleared by the local law enforcement and the health department. And we're going to be at the high school making sure that the kids are following the rules about one per car. So yes, we're going to continue on with that. Okay.
Tom?
Yes.
You need any help at the high school or to organize that?
I know Mr. Goodwin's going to be out there. Mr. Jeffrey and Mrs. Arnold all said they would help. If you want to come out, as long as we all stay 6 feet apart also, that's fine. We're just gonna, like I said, make sure they stay in their cars and one per car. So if you want to come out to the high school Saturday afternoon, that'd be great. I think they'd love to see you out there. You know, they've lost so much. And I think us being there to show them that we care and we want to make sure this works for them would go a long way. So I'm not telling you you have to, but if any of you want to come out there, that's fine. If you want to just stand along the road and do that and show your support, that would be great too. So, and we're encouraging people, you know, if you have signs and things you want to hold up for the kids as they drive by, that would be wonderful. So, okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. This is another one that there's far more questions than answers. What preparations are we making for next fall in case we have to have more restrictions on in-class instruction? Really, all I can tell you at this point is we really stepped up what our meetings and trying to figure things out this week to plan for next year. Once we learned last week that we definitely weren't coming back this year. So we are working on any option that we can possibly think of. You know, obviously there are probably more than this, but I think there are 4 options as I see it right now. One is we continue doing what we're doing now, which the biggest thing we can do there is help prepare our staff to be more proficient in online instruction. The second would be, and this would be the one I'd love to see, us just coming back as we always have been. We obviously know what we would do then. In a sense, but that's when I say come back as we always have been, no social distancing. I know that's not a reality. The third is coming back either every other day or half days, splitting the classes so that we can have fewer kids in the building at a time, which would help us with social distancing. We've started to lay out some skeleton plans on all of those. The fourth would be very difficult also. That would be if everybody just came back and we had to try to practice social distancing with everybody here. I'm going to be blunt. I don't see how in the world we could possibly do that. I was on a call last week and we had state reps on there. And I think it's been eye-opening for them at times because as the superintendents were all saying our issues that we see with coming back next year, and we started talking about being 6 feet apart, the one that I think is probably our most difficult challenge, they hadn't even thought of. And that is buses. How in the world can we keep kids 6 feet apart on buses? Rita and I've talked about this over and over. You know, we figure we might be able to get about 14 kids on a bus and keep them 6 feet apart. And we don't have enough bus drivers as it is. So there's no way we could purchase enough buses that we only kept 14 kids on a bus. So that's going to be one of our biggest hurdles and challenges is figuring out how we're going to do that. But as I said, not a lot of answers at this time, but we are trying to start to plan. Rita and I are working on how we can deal with transportation if we're going half days, or even if we just have to go different start times for elementary, middle school, high school, how we could do that to keep fewer kids on the buses. You know, Mrs. Giesen Shelley has been starting to think about serving kids and how we can do that with fewer kids in the cafeteria, because once again, how do you keep kids socially distant in the cafeteria? We talked about classrooms, but then we're talking about having to have more staff in order to cover. But these are all conversations that we're having, and we will hopefully have the best plan that we can for whichever way that we come back. Like I said, right now we're sort of looking at every possibility we can think of so we at least have a start on it, so that when we do find out what it's going to be, we can just run from what we've got started. Run from was the wrong term, but continue going with it and have at least a good start and move forward. But it's, you know, there are a lot of questions out there. We're talking about PPEs and things. Are we going to have masks for everybody? You know, and I think that probably we're going to. So starting to think about how many masks we're going to have and how long they last. Paper or cloth. I mean, paper, and these things are all costs, obviously, too. So going all the way back to what cost do we see rising, this is going to be a cost for us. Paper masks, the cheapest I'm seeing are like $1.50 a piece, and those are one-time use. So that's really probably not a good option. Cloth masks, I'm seeing the cheapest I'm seeing is $7.50. We may be able to do something to get them, but obviously the kids we're going to need to launder those and everything. But those are the things we're looking at. As you all know, I've been out trying to find a place to get us some hand sanitizer, and we're going to try some that I'm going to go pick up on Saturday. It's coming from a distillery. I'm looking at how many people are watching this on YouTube. Hopefully it doesn't smell like whiskey, which is, I shouldn't even say it, but it's not going to. But we're finding ways to try to get through it, and we will be as prepared as we can come fall. Not a lot of answers right now. We're moving forward, but I would love if you have questions, ask them, because it may be something we haven't thought about yet, and we need to think about it. So if you've got them now, please ask. If you don't, please email us so that we can work on those issues too. So, but we're all in that wait and see mode right now. It's sort of like I said, the week leading up to the closure, we had an administrative team meeting every day. And every day we tried to look at every possible thing that could happen, and we tried to plan for it. And it seemed like every day when we ended our meeting, the governor would come on and everything we planned went right out the window because everything changed. But we continued to plan with all the what ifs that we could think of. And that's what we're doing right now. All the what ifs we can think of for the fall. So that was a long-winded way of saying, I don't know yet. So, but please, if you have questions, send them on to us so we can look at those different things also. So. This is part of my other things on the agenda, so I'll skip this one and come back to it. That was about our facilities, which we need to talk about on the agenda tonight, but I want everybody to talk about that. The pipeline money, Ann, were you going to address that in yours? We have received our first half of the pipeline money. We can talk about that a little more during Ann's report, and we'll move on with that because Ann and I have been in a couple of online meetings about that too, that we can share where we're at with the pipeline's appeal. Negotiations, we'll talk about that in executive session because I did talk to the union yesterday about it, and we have something to discuss. So we will have an executive session for the board members, and that will be part of that. We've talked about expenditures, Memorial Day parades. I have not heard for certain yet, so if either of the mayors are watching us on YouTube, if you could please reach out to me and let me know if we're going to have Memorial Day parades this year. We're trying to figure that out. Honestly, I don't know how they can and follow the rules that have been laid out by the governor. They did reach out to Mrs. Riley, and she said she did not hear anything from them at this point. As far as marching and parades, it would be awful difficult. The kids are usually already practicing marching by now, plus we're closed. And how are you going to socially distance marching? They may be able to do something at the cemeteries if they move forward with at least the trumpets for playing taps and things, but I don't have a solid answer on that. I will reach out to both mayors, and once I get an answer, I will let you know. So once again, if the mayors are watching, please just let me know. So band camp and summer sports training, just like everything else, we're on a wait and see. If we went by what's being done today, I'd say that neither one can happen, but those are 2 months away. So we're just going to have to wait and see how everything plays out. We have not canceled anything at this point, and we're hoping that we can get all those things in. So it's just a matter of trying to stay positive. We want the kids to have all those opportunities. We don't want them to miss out. Plus, we want them to be ready. If we have them in the summer, then we know we're having them in the fall. So that's what we're hoping for, but stay tuned on that. That is it for the questions that you had all sent me. Now, I'm assuming that you may have some other questions. So this is your opportunity, or administrators, if you have anything you would like to add that I have not said, please do so at this time before I move on to my other things on the my report.
don't have a question, but I think just based on your report, we owe everyone in the district a big thank you. It's inadequate, but certainly with all you've described and certainly the meetings that you've gone through and trying to anticipate what's going to happen in the future and the challenges that you've had to face or the staff has had to deal with. Rest assured, for my part, and everyone else can chime in, but you're all due a great big thank you. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Muthig. And you saying that reminds me, there are two groups that I forgot to say thank you to and say how wonderful they've been. And that's our students and their parents, because they have picked up the ball and run with it on this too. It's been very difficult for them, and we truly understand that. I say all the time, I am just thankful that my kids are in college. I cannot imagine doing this with little ones. They have all been wonderful. They have been very patient with us, and I cannot praise them and our community enough. So I just want to make sure I say that too. I don't want to neglect that. They have made this very difficult situation a little easier for all of us, along with the teachers and the rest of the staff, which I've mentioned earlier. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. I see that a couple other board members have unmuted themselves. So.
I know the school does a great job at usually assisting our seniors with scholarships and that type of thing. What's going on that front right now with the limitations and getting kids at the school?
Are you talking about our local scholarships or scholarships outside?
Any of them.
Okay. Well, I know, and Mr. Goodwin, please feel free to chime in if at any time too, but all the scholarships for our local scholarships were turned in. We are planning to have our senior awards night with that and senior recognition. I don't really want to mention what our plan is until it's 100% approved. But we want to do something special for them in that sense. But we do plan on having that. So all of our local scholarships will be given out as always. As far as the scholarships from colleges and others, I know that Mrs. Spademan has been working with the kids continually. I'm sure she continues to do it online. And has Mrs. Brown been helping with that also, Mr. Goodwin? So both of the counselors out at the high school have continued to work with our students to help them get the scholarships from the colleges they're going to and other outside scholarships. So. Okay, all right, nothing else. Moving on. I had a question that was brought to me by a local community group, and I said I would discuss it with you. I know my thought, and I can share it, or I can wait to hear what you all think. But that's with facility usage. I obviously told them while the schools are closed, they can't use our facilities. The question was, after school is out, would we allow them to use our facilities? My first response is obviously it depends on what the governor says. I mean, if we're still under this stay-at-home order, which we are at this time, and he still is saying that we have to limit groups to 10 or fewer, which we currently have, then those things would really be a moot point. But the question is, do we want to let people use the buildings and other facilities, the ball diamonds in the summer, if it's relaxed a little? I figure if it's relaxed and we're allowed to be out and about, that's not a problem. But I just wanted to make sure everybody's on the same boat. Basically, I'm saying it's up to what the governor says. Would everybody be in agreement with that? If the governor says it's okay to come back after school is out of session, obviously, we're not going to let them use our facilities while we're not in session. So
I'd agree with that.
I agree with that.
Okay. All right.
I would too. And I mean, we have to, I would assume for insurance reasons that, if they're legally allowed to meet, then we can let them meet. But if they don't meet whatever guidelines, I would assume with liability, we can't let them use the facilities.
Yes, I would agree. So, okay.
So Tom, if all other restrictions are lifted, but we're still within the school year. And, obviously the school's closed, but, what would be the harm in allowing the use of outside facilities as long as all of those other restrictions were lifted?
I would just think because we're still closed that we wouldn't want to let them use it. Now, I can give the answer of John. I don't think we really have to worry about that. But that was sort of my thought. If we're still closed and they're saying we can't be here, then we shouldn't allow others to be here either. So I know the ball fields are the big question because they're outside and everything, but definitely the gym space and such like that, things like that. So.
Okay.
I think we're talking about something we really don't have to worry about, but it is a good question. I mean, and if you think that if they lift the thing before the end of the school year, then do we let people use the ball diamonds?
I mean, I personally wouldn't have a problem with it, but, I know everything that came out yesterday from the governor, he had a listing of what's allowed to open May 4th, what's allowed to open, and was it May 12th or something like that. And then there was a list of businesses that are still required to be closed, and within that were organized sports groups or clubs. So, he may just keep that, as you're saying, off the list until we don't tell schools out anyway.
Yeah. And I would think our next meeting is probably right in that time frame that if he were to lift it, that we could make that at the next board meeting. I think it's the 18th. I don't have a calendar in front of me, so we could certainly look at that then. So. And I have a group that asked if I got a phone call today about a class that wants to have another 50th class reunion here over Labor Day. So I can tell them the same thing. We'll wait and see what the governor says. So
I'm inclined to go along with everyone else. I would just wonder if maybe on the facility use request, if we need to add anything about compliance with the governor's directives that, if you use our facilities, you agree that you will comply with the governor's directives at this point.
We could look at adding that. I know some of the ones that are already done, obviously, because like the EYSL, we already approved that. So that's on the old form, but we did approve it, I believe, with the contingency of if we're allowed to have them here when we did approve that one. So it'd be the same, but that's something for future. We're learning a lot of things that we need to add language to during this pandemic that no one would have ever thought you would have to add. So that is something we may need to add to a lot of our forms. So it's a good point. I'm going to skip to number F and come back to letter F and come back to D for those of you who have an agenda. And I just want to mention that I was contacted by the people who rented our buses for 4-H camp last year, saying how happy they were to rent our buses. And, if they are allowed to have camps this summer, they would love to do it again. I know that 4-H camps have been canceled at this point, but they said they still are hoping that they might have some sports teams over there on the island. So I'm just telling you that if they do, they are going to probably reach out to us to borrow, or not borrow, because we rented it to them, rent them a bus again. So I would use the same contract that we used last year. So yes, Mrs. Harpering, I see the smile on your face there. We will rent the bus again and let them use it. But I think, once again, that's a moot point. I really don't think they're going to have camps on the island this summer that they need our bus. Now, jumping back to D, the facility project update. And what this really is I wanted to have a conversation with the board members about what we want to do at this moment moving forward. I have not spoken to GPD because I wanted to talk to you first. There's a lot going on, obviously. And when I do talk to GPD, I want to make certain that we're all on the same page. Obviously, we haven't been able to have any meetings because we can't gather to look at facilities. And I'm not sure how soon we're going to be able to. But I guess my question for all of you is, what do we want to look at with GPD at this point? Is this something that we want to talk to them about? I hate to use the phrase put on the shelf for now, and make certain that they will continue to work with us in the future. You know, there was no time frame within the contract that we had with them. It just said they would be here to help us as we got through this. So I think that would be an option with them, is just waiting, because this probably is not the best time for us to be looking at that. Or do we want to continue to try to move forward at this point? Or do we want to see if we can just get out of the contract and where we're at? I believe one of you had put in something about the forced, I'm going to say it wrong, forced majeure clause, giving us the opportunity to get out of the contract. And I did not have a chance to look at that contract today. I do not remember it being in it, but I could certainly look at it. So that is my question posed to all of you for conversation at this point. What are your thoughts on it?
I would think that we just, like a lot of things, just move it back a year, if that's possible. You know, we kind of started the process over the winter time, and I thought we had a pretty good timing as far as scheduling, gathering information through the spring, coming up with some ideas this summer, with the idea of maybe putting something, you know, forward in November. And I think if we just put everything on hold for a year, by next winter, we'll know whether hopefully by then we'll have an understanding of where we're at, you know, as far as the society and world, that maybe we can restart that process at that time. And we just lost a year, like a lot of things have just, everything's got pushed back a year. You know, this year it's kind of a mulligan so far. I mean, that's my thought. I'd hate to see us give up. I mean, because I think the need doesn't go away just because of this. But obviously, with everything, you guys have way too much to deal with going into next school year to even think about continuing it right now. But hopefully, maybe by next winter time, like I say, I thought that schedule we were on was a pretty good schedule, and hopefully we can kind of just restart the process next winter into spring and you know, get that momentum going again that we lost. That's my thoughts.
I agree.
I agree. We ought to stay in the contract, and when conditions get more conducive down the road, that we'll resume again. But right now, the whole world is on hold.
It probably makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously, to try to do anything in November at this point is going to be, you know, super difficult and not the result that anybody would want. So, yeah, I think that makes sense what Matt was saying.
I agree, and I don't think we can just flat out cancel it, because eventually we will be going back, and we still have the old buildings, and we still have the same problems with those buildings that we have had, and they'll be a year older. So, I mean, at some point we're going to have to deal with that issue. Now is clearly not the time, but at some point we got to do it. So we might as well just put it on hold and then keep going forward when we can. When we know budget issues, when we know employment issues for our community members, when we know pipeline money issues. So I think we'll have a better picture in a year, but I don't think we just stop it.
Okay, perfect. I will call Mark tomorrow and tell him, I mean, they've been very good. They have not talked to me since August 12th oh my Lord, March 12th, when the governor announced that we were closing schools. So, but I'm sure they're thinking about us. I know they know we're busy. I'll reach out to them and tell them that's what we would like to do. And I'm sure they will be fine with that. So I will let you know after I talk to them. So, all right. All right. That is it for my portion of, or at least my report, and only an hour and 5 minutes. That was shorter than I thought. But since I have all the administrators here and I asked them to join in, I told them that I didn't expect reports from them because this portion was going to be so long. I just wanted them to be here to help answer questions if needed. Before they go, And they're allowed to stay if they want to continue. I know they're all thinking, I want to stay through the whole meeting. First, offer out to the board members if you have any questions for any of them before I discuss them. And then also for the administrators, if they have anything they want to share before they leave, if they choose to leave. So.
I don't have any questions for any of them, but I do want to say, similar to what Bill was saying, thank you to all of the administrators for everything you've been doing, the support you're providing to your teachers and your staff and to the students and their, their families. So thank you for all of that. I know it's not easy for anybody. And I think you're all making it work out as well as it possibly can right now.
Thank you.
I guess a question would be, is there anything that the board can do for you at this point? Except for that.
I'll echo what the other board members said, though. We really do appreciate you guys. I've heard nothing but positive. I mean, there's always negative people out there, but I think it's a true reflection of our district, how we've handled this situation. I heard someone say that times like, anybody can perform and times are going good, but when we have times like this, you really see the true colors. And we really appreciate you guys. Make our job a lot easier. You guys have really stepped it up and amazed me. Really, some of the way we've been able to transition into what we're dealing with now. So I appreciate everything everyone's done.
Thank you.
Nobody has anything to tell Mr. Muthig they need? All right. Going once, going twice. Thank you, administrators. Like I said, you are more than welcome to stay on if you want. But if not, have a good night and we will talk to you tomorrow. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll still be on the call, just to make sure everything goes through YouTube fine.
Yep, that's fine, Rob. I would appreciate that. So.
Dropping like flies.
And I knew they would. That's fine. All right. Moving on, unless there are any other questions, I would like to move into my portion of the consent agenda.
Okay.
All right. I would ask that the board consider approval of item 5A1, resignations. We have a bus driver who is resigning at the end of the year, just ready to retire. So, we hate to see Mr. Smith go, but we understand. We hate to see anybody go, but especially bus drivers makes it a little more difficult at times. But Paul has been a good employee for the past few years, and we wish him luck. He is going to continue to sub for us, though, so he'll be there for us in that sense. I'd ask that you consider approval of item 5A2, employments. Now, in a time where it may seem odd that we're hiring people, this is our family community liaison that we are able to hire through the student wellness funds that the state gave us this year. So these are funds that have to be spent for specific reasons. We've planned on hiring this person all year. We finally found someone that we want. We'll be able to carry over money from this year to next year. So she'll finish out. She'll start in June and help with our counselors and things and get prepared. And she'll definitely be here with us next year. She understands that this could be a one-year deal because we don't know what our funding is going to be next year. But that is why we have this on the agenda. When you're thinking, why are we hiring somebody? It's grant money, basically. So I would ask that you consider approval of item 5A3, recognition of school volunteers. We have one this month. Then I would ask that you consider items 5A4 through 14, is it not? think I'm missing some. Or is it-
Yes, 14.
Okay. I'm missing a couple on mine. I know that we're going to need to pull number 9 for Mr. Betts to vote on separately, but these are all of our renewals of contracts with our staff, renewals of teachers and staff and non-certified staff that are up for new contracts, salary notices for everybody who's not up for a new contract. We do have 2. I know in my letter to you on Friday, I said we had a question about 2 teachers moving to continuing contracts. That is all settled. So they will be, I am recommending that those 2 be given continuing contracts this evening and not the limited contract. As I explained in our letter, it was all about evaluations and such, and we worked through all that. So just another thing that this pandemic has thrown some monkey wrenches into, things that you would never think of. I would ask that you consider approval of item 5B, gifts and contributions. We have one this month from the Randolph J. and Estelle M. Dorn Foundation, a donation of $1,000 to go towards the Reading Under the Lights event. So even though we may not have that this year, we will be able to hold it over for next year. We thank the foundation for their generous donation. As always, our community gives us so much to help us do things for our students that we would never be able to without them. So we thank them as always. Then I would ask that you consider approval of item 5C, the approval of leave of absence. This is a leave of absence that we need to approve by law. So that is it for my portion of the consent agenda. I will have some additional items after.
Okay, I'm in need of a motion for the consent agenda A through C with the exception of A9.
So moved.
So moved.
I have a motion. Need a second?
Second.
Okay. Don't know who did it, but
Nope, I got to know. John, you were first?
I can be the second. That's fine.
Okay, who was first?
I think
Jeff?
I will. Yeah.
Okay. I apologize because when I'm not looking up and you're talking at the same time, I can't make it out.
Right.
So,
You can't really see Jeff anyway there.
yeah, Jeff, always see us your forehead. There you go.
Is that better?
Yes.
I have a big forehead. What are you going to do?
Okay.
I have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. Can we have vote, please?
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Betts,
Yes.
Mr. Muthig,
Yes.
Mr. McLeister,
Yes.
Mr. Suhanik.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. All right.
Thank you.
I'm in need of a motion for 5A9 on the consent agenda.
Make a motion.
Matt made a motion. I'll second it.
Okay. I
Okay.
have a motion and a second. Vote.
Mr. McLeister,
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Betts,
Abstain.
Mr. Muthig,
Yes.
Mr. Suhanik.
Yes, motion carries 4-0 with one abstaining.
Okay, thank you. I would ask that the board consider approval of item 6A under the additional recommendations, and that is the approval of adoption of the first reading of board policies DJ, DJF, DJF-R, DI, and DLC-R.
I move that we adopt the first reading of the 5 policies as set forth.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Okay.
Guess we'll have a vote on that.
Mr. Muthig,
Yes.
Mr. McLeister,
Yes.
Mr. Betts,
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Suhanik.
Yes, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would ask that the board consider approval of item 6B, the approval of the resolution by the Edison Local Schools Board of Education to administer the Ohio third grade English language arts and mathematics assessment in a paper format during the 2020-2021 school year. As you know, every year we have to decide if we want to do our third grade test, or we're allowed to decide, it's the only grade level, we're allowed to decide if we want to do our state testing online or paper and pencil. We have felt that our students are still really learning how to do the digital stuff at that age level. And we prefer to have them do paper and pencil, and give them another year to learn that digital way to take the tests and start that in 4th grade. So every year, in order for us to be allowed to do paper and pencil, we need to pass a resolution. So that is why that is on this evening. So
We did the same last year, didn't we?
yes, we have to do it every year in order to do paper and pencil. If we want to do electronic, we don't have to do anything. But if we want to do paper pencil, we have to do this resolution. So.
And if the school's not in, we can still do it electronically. This just gives us the authorization if they're in to do it with paper.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I move to approve that.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for 6B. Vote?
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. McLeister,
Yes.
Mr. Muethig,
Yes.
Mr. Betts,
Yes.
Mr. Suhanik.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd ask that the board consider approval of item 6C, the approval of the resolution extending the use of distance learning blizzard bags for the 2019 school year as permitted under Ohio House Bill 197. As you know, every summer, if we choose to do distance learning and blizzard bags during the school year, we have to pass a resolution prior to August 1st. We did that last year, but that's only good for 3 days. The state in House Bill 197 has given all of us the opportunity to obviously amend that. A lot of school districts didn't even do it. They have to pass a resolution just to do it, but we just need to amend it saying that what we're doing now with the distance learning, you've approved so that the days count. If you don't, then we'll be in violation of the state law, and we'll have to make everybody come to school in the summer, which is not going to be feasible anyway. So I just need to stop talking and let you guys make a motion. So
Why would it not be 2021?
because this is to finish this year. This is this school year, Mark.
Okay.
This is all the days that the kids are at home right now. We're extending the 3-day one we passed last year for the remainder of this year. We will have to pass a new one this summer for next year.
Okay,
So
understood.
We've been in a blizzard for over a month now.
Yeah, we could still have one.
we'll just call them cold and rainy day bags, not blizzard bags. So
All right, a motion for 6C, please.
So moved.
So,
Oh, yeah,
Matt first, Jeff second.
Got it. You guys are just doing them all. Okay.
Whoever has the fastest internet.
not me.
Okay. Mr. McLeister,
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Muethig,
Yes.
Mr. Betts,
Yes.
Mr. Suhanik.
Yes.
Thank you.
all right, thank you. That is it for my portion of the agenda. So,
All right, thank you. We could go into treasurer's report.
We can. Okay, I'm gonna try to do a little ditty. I lost all my notes. The one thing, couple things that I wanted to talk about. One, and I put it in my letter to you about the Auditor State Award, which I was very pleased about. I still haven't heard that from the auditor himself, so I'm hoping the register has it right. But I almost, I was on a webinar with the auditor's office today, and it was treasurers across the state. It was basically a question and answer period, probably one of the best things I've ever been on during this whole crisis so far. And he's supposed to schedule another one, but we really had a lot of things that needed clarification, and he did a really good job answering questions. There were even some things that Tom and I had to call the attorney about at the end, just to confirm some things on how we need to do a couple things, because one of the questions was taking action and something that is already in law that he said we really should take board action, and everybody was super confused about that, but hopefully we'll have that straightened out tomorrow on what we actually really need to do. So that being said, I'm going to try to do this presentation that I have on here, so bear with me. Okay, Rob, do we need to instruct them to do anything? Okay. All right, so you are going to see my presentation here in a second. Okay, can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay, so this was something that was sent out back towards the end of March from the company that we use for forecasting. I thought it was really good and just has some points on it that I'll kind of go through here. Basically, the reality is it's way too early to make predictions about what our fiscal future is going to look like. Every year when I do the May forecast, I always say, it's really an update and a forecast is only as good as the numbers. Well, right now, this is a complete crapshoot. We'll just put it that way. So, we don't know exactly what the fallout is going to be yet. Economic downturns, root causes, 2020, we had a pandemic. 2008 was our financial system. 2001, we had terrorism. And in 1918, we had a pandemic. We kind of discussed that at our last board meeting. After the 1918 pandemic, World War I resulted in economic stimulus. The next 10 years, we experienced economic growth. And then the economic growth ended in 1929 when the stock market crashed. What's happening today? $2 trillion, economic stimulus bill is the latest approved federal legislation. And obviously, since I've done that, there's discussion that there's going to be additional funds for that. Stimulus funding is 10% of our gross domestic product. Massive federal stimulus is a lesson learned from mistakes that were made post-1929. Key stimulus bill education provisions. Added flexibility in how our federal funds are used, especially in Title I. We are probably not going to have any additional flexibility with that because basically our Title I dollars are used for our salaries in that era. Child care grants and programs don't really pertain to us. Funding for school cleaning and disinfecting, that is some of the things that if we need it, you can use for. And funding for internet connectivity for students. So right now we haven't had to use any of those items. Possible future legislation topics. Addressing issues related to FERPA because of all this distance learning, address the issues that are coming out with IDEA. A lot of this stuff, we've now progressed to where this has, since I've done this presentation, that we've now progressed to where we know what we're doing with this and how making sure that, we're following the guidelines. Additional funding for our food service programs. Basically, we will be very lucky to not have to advance money to our food service program this year. So we know that at this point. We will see how that washes out at the end. We do not qualify for seamless summer program cost or to feed kids in the summer because we don't have a high enough free and reduced lunch rate to qualify for that. So unless they would make a change with that, we won't be allowed to do that. Additional funding for other costs associated with the pandemic. We don't know exactly what those are yet, but they're topics of discussion at the legislative level. In the decade since we had the rainy day budget, stabilization fund was drawn down to 89 cents. And some of you may remember that when they gave us that budget stabilization dollars several years ago. But it has been built back up to $2.7 billion, which is 6 weeks of state spending. Possible impacts on school expenditures, obviously increases in our food service, our technology, cleaning and custodial. I don't really see that at this point because we've sat with our buildings empty so long. We know that the virus is gone, and right now we have our custodians coming in and cleaning. On the our teachers are coming in on Fridays, and then Mondays the custodians are coming in and cleaning the buildings as they normally would do a cleaning. So that will help. Decreases, we talked about earlier, utilities, bus fuel, paper. When the teachers are coming in, especially at the elementary level, probably not so much at the high school and the upper middle school, but they're coming in and running our copy machines like crazy. So at least they were. I'm not sure how that's going to go at this point. And resource redirection, basically moving from instructional supplies to instructional software on some of these areas, which we've kind of been doing so far in some areas, especially like in textbooks, but we still have that expense, so that won't really change. Possible impacts on our revenue. Property taxes should be relatively stable through this year. There is discussion out there right now about delaying the property taxes, and that was one of the questions that we had today on our call with Auditor Faber, and they brought up the fact that, okay, is that something that's, we're going to push the due date back on the property taxes? And at this point, he said the tax commissioner is not in favor of that, which we as school officials are not as well. Our current collections are probably going to fall. Could be as much as up to 4 to 6%, and it just depends on what our socioeconomic status is in our district at that point, and how many people are experiencing layoffs and stuff. Eventually, we will collect those, but they're going to be delinquencies. So, like for our forecast, we are going to probably anticipate about a 4 to 6% shift in that. In just watching that, we're going to probably take it down a notch. We eventually will collect them, but it's going to be a little while. Yeah.
I will say that I was in a meeting with Pam Farrell Monday.
Okay.
And she said, actually, right now, we're ahead of the ball game in collecting property taxes. They're wondering if some people have paid this year for the full year rather than half.
Okay.
They're wondering if what happened is people are using their stimulus checks to pay in advance to make sure that things are covered rather than just wasting it. She isn't sure why, but actually right now they're ahead of the ball game.
Okay.
She is concerned about delinquencies for those who become unemployed, but right now collections are up, which is a good thing.
Okay, good. I haven't talked to Rick Jeffrey recently to see where we stand with that. So usually he kind of keeps me up on that, but obviously we're not in the same world that we were a month ago.
Right.
So we would rather have those hanging out there as delinquencies instead of, because if you push this collection period out, then you're going to just have that continual cycle. So we'd rather see it just hang out as delinquencies. I have a meeting tomorrow with the Education Legislative Finance Committee, SPRO ASBO, and I know that's going to be one of the topics that comes out. Don't really have a lot of new construction going on, but it is a buyer's market right now for home sales. And boy, I'll tell you what, I've been doing a ton of verifications of employment for our employees for loans and those kind of things. So it definitely is. State funding. Stability through the end of the current fiscal year. Right now, even Auditor Faber said it today, our forecasting company that we use, the discussions that we've had with them are anywhere from 10 to 20% reduction in our state funding. Today, Auditor Faber said 20%. They are all cutting their budgets by 20%. I had asked a question, but there were so many questions, they couldn't get to them all. One thing that we would like to see is the student wellness and success funds that we were getting about 75,000 for, or 71,000 for this year, and anticipated to get 104 next year, that if they could just cut those out and keep that as part of that to offset what we would lose in foundation, that's kind of what we're hoping. It's a recommendation that several treasurers have brought. And I asked that question today, but unfortunately my question didn't get answered. So I submitted it online, and they were going to try to get some questions answered on that stuff. Expecting decreased funding in our state foundation. For right now, we are expecting, like I said, the 10 to 20%. We'll see what happens after that. They're postponing the funding reform that had been in process for a while, and they were supposed to continue that, but that's on hold right now. And obviously our investment income, significant decrease in our lower interest rates. They're anticipating those to drop below 1%. So, John, I don't know if you've heard anything on that or not.
Yeah, 1% would be a great rate right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So looking at that, just some possible impacts, lessons that we could have learned from the Great Recession, that actual school revenues decreased. Tax reduction factors sometimes worked in reverse. Statewide values took 10 years to recover. So hopefully it won't. State funding took 3 state budget cycles to return to our 2008 levels. The federal stimulus money that we got between 2011 and 13 helped secure our school budgets, and then actual budget reductions for some years, which we've experienced. I kind of did a comparison. I wanted to see what our Star Ohio investment rate was back in 2007. It was 5.18%. And as of the end of March, we were at 1.01. So just kind of gives you an indication of how things have changed. And again, it's too early for us at this point to really have any concrete numbers, concrete assurances of what to expect. As far as state funding goes, obviously the casino money is, approximately $75,000 a year. The casinos have been closed since March 16th. That revenue is not really material in our forecast, but it's reasonable that it could drop by 40%. We will likely see it go up for 2022 by about 20%, and then 20% in 2023, and then get back by 24 to our current levels. So unless people go out and spend their stimulus money on that once they reopen, which I don't see that happening for a while either. But again, that's not a huge part of it for us. Let's see, what else do I have here? That's about it on that. Let me see. Now I have to stop sharing this.
And you said something in there about I forget what you call it, seamless summer, about feeding kids over the summer.
Yeah.
You said that we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to do it, or we wouldn't get any funding for it.
We wouldn't get any funding for it. Plus it would be, is my presentation gone?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, this is new for me. No, at this point, what they did when we were able to feed kids right now, they applied for a waiver, and basically that waiver said if you were approved for the waiver, that you could feed kids that were under the age of 18, and you would get reimbursement for those. So that was a great benefit for us, but we still have all the cost. And we don't have any of the a la carte foods that Shelley would normally sell. So she makes a lot of her money on the a la carte foods that kids buy on the side, because the reimbursement basically is enough to cover the cost of the food. So the a la carte is what helps her pay for her staffing and all of that. And the food service fund is self-funded. So if you have to have I'm trying to think if it's 50% or 30% for Seamless Summer. Do you know, Tom?
I think it's 40 actually, but
Okay.
but I think it's 40.
Yeah, but we don't qualify for that. So no, they will not have us feed kids during the summer and get reimbursed for it.
But could
They
we
did give us
Could we do it if we wanted to pay for it? I'm not saying we do, but I'm just asking.
Yes, I believe that we could, but there would be, obviously that would be all extra time that we would have to pay the cafeteria staff as well. Anything that they work would be outside of their contract and would all be extra, and they would have to agree to do it.
Right.
Plus, obviously, the cost of the food too, so.
Yeah, yep.
Just curious.
Well, and we're not sure if the government's going to step up and say that we can, because the districts that have that higher percentage of free and reduced have done it for years. Right. And I know Sandusky does it. I think Norwalk does it. So
I work in Mansfield. They do it every year.
Yeah. So.
And then, and you might have mentioned it, maybe I missed it, and I'm obviously a bricklayer. I'm not a banker, but isn't there going to be, you throw, I don't know where this $2 trillion comes from that they throw out there, but I mean, won't our costs go up? Won't there be inflation, especially with food costs? It seems like, I mean, I would assume it's, they say it's supply and demand. I think it's a little bit of extortion, but I've noticed just going to the grocery store that, I'm paying more for everything. Is some of that figured in, or is that something that's just an unknown yet too? But I mean, it's inevitable, isn't it? When you throw all this money into, I don't know, like I say, I don't know where that money comes from. If you do, John, let me know. But, whenever you throw all that money out there, I mean, it's just a wash, really, in my mind.
It's all going to come from your future taxes.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and that's where, as a banker, we're looking at how does all of these stimulus programs, how does that really affect the economy? And, you've got the payment protection program that the SBA is doing. So if a small business is taking that, they're able to pay their employees for 2 months and have that forgiven. So, that hopefully keeps some people off unemployment, keeps some people getting paid. I know that doesn't work for every business, and it's not going to work for everybody, but, that's where it seems like some of this, I'll call it the pandemic recession, might end up being a little bit different than what we've seen in the past. It's not, last one was driven a lot by home prices and that sort of thing. I can tell you the mortgage business, as Ann said, with what she's getting with the requests on income verifications, that mortgage business is going crazy right now. And it might just be people refinancing, but there's still seems to be a lot of homes turning over and that sort of thing. So, no one really knows where this is going to go and how we're going to end up and what might happen further with COVID-19. But, at the moment, with all of the money that the government's pumping in, we might not see quite the same recession, but you're right, Matt, that could also create a lot of inflation really, really quick. So, yeah.
That's my big worry, that our costs are just going to go through the roof for everything, but especially with food.
Yeah, well, the price of fuel is fuel's down, and that's a good thing. And when the price of oil goes negative, and they're paying people to take it off their hands, then you got a different scenario going on. So it definitely is a strange world right now. And I know, fortunately, we're, especially in the line of food, for a while, we, Shelley had planned a menu for the first week, and then that she had to completely throw out the window because we couldn't get the food that she had on her menu. I have friends who are farmers who have said, they're having to give up a lot of it. Some things you've been able to get really reasonable. Tom was able to pick up 40 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken breast for 99 cents a pound because the restaurants, the processors, and I know Chef's Garden, they're like sitting on like fruits and veggies and all that stuff that, all these restaurants that they sell to are closed.
Huh.
And so they're sitting on stuff. I know Bob said there was, I can't think of the name of the company, the food truck that was sitting selling produce out of their truck, just trying to make any kind of money they could, and you could get it fairly cheap. So.
But yeah, one of the things, and I say this half tongue in cheek, you talk about food, Matt. One of the things that I'm worried about, we talked about buying things like hand sanitizer. Toilet paper might be difficult for us when it comes time to reopen too. Mm-hmm. And what will the cost of that be? So,
yeah,
you smirk and I say it to them, but honestly, have you gone and tried to find toilet paper? So that's going to be another cost. But just another thing you talk about right now, they're dumping milk because there's nothing, they can't do anything with it because schools aren't buying it and processing the cheese. And so they're just dumping milk. So it's strange.
Yeah. All right. That's all I have for that. If I can move into my portion of the agenda.
Yes.
Okay. What?
I'm still awake.
Okay. Item 7A is the approval of the March 17th, the regular meeting minute. Item B is the approval of the monthly financial statements. I had to add that one presentation. I did not put these on there. So we're just going to discuss. Looking at our cash reconciliation, obviously we got our real estate settlement in, so we have a balance of $9,040,000. So that's a good thing. Our investment sheet, I'm afraid to see it for April with Red Tree because we're at 2.54 right now with this, and hopefully it will stay up. We'll just say that.
Don't even look at it.
No, I get my own financial statements and they scare me enough. And then the financial summary that you have. The one thing that we'll be keeping an eye on too with this, like I said, is the food service fund. Obviously, right now on this financial summary, she's sitting at $20,000. But again, that's going to continually deplete. So by the end of the year, we will probably have to advance the food service fund money from the general fund. And then we would have that paid back. But I have a feeling this cycle could happen for next year as well, too. And Shelley is very devastated by that because she takes such great pride in making sure that she has a positive balance. And it's a very difficult thing in the food service department to do that. So, but athletics will be another area that we'll want to keep an eye on as well. Obviously, fall sports and football and winter basketball, those are our big revenue generators. And depending what happens with the fall sports season, we may not have that. And as we talked about, there's always the potential that we have to be ready. Like Tom said, we try to make plans and have everything in place that we need to have, but we also don't want to be fiscally irresponsible and get things that we may not need realistically. So a lot of conversations are happening. As he said, we're meeting weekly as an administrative team and talking about all of these things just to keep things where they need to be. And then moving into the general fund analysis. Our revenue for March was higher than we anticipated. But again, that's due to the receipt of the Nexus pipeline funds. And in our November forecast, we didn't know what that would be. So we don't have those numbers in there. Right now, we've received 91.29% of our revenues, and our revenues for the same period last year are up 7.95%, and expenditures are only up 1.46%. Looking at our revenue for the month of March, obviously our public utility is good. We received just over $1.2 million for pipeline money. A portion of that goes to the Permanent Improvement Fund. Our real estate collection, we are down about $263,000 from where we were anticipating. We have not received all of our manufactured homes money yet. So we'll see how that washes out. And I want to check with the county auditor on where our delinquencies stand right now. Investments, we are still up 12,000 year to date. Other local receipts are up 138. You will see a drop in those. We have refunded preschool tuition, which goes into that line item. We have refunded that for April and May, while we're in the process of refunding more of May. And anybody who we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be coming back before we did everything if anybody prepaid. But we just decided that preschool is really not getting their preschoolers. Tom, I guess you could probably say it best of how to explain. I mean, the teachers are teaching them.
Yeah, we just felt that the preschool, the experience is not the same just getting papers, which is pretty much what they're getting. We aren't doing anything or very little online, but I really don't think we're doing anything online with the preschoolers. So we felt it best for our families that they should not be paying for what they would be getting if they were in school. We thought it was the right thing to do. Is basically the best way I can say it. You know, I couldn't feel right, or I don't want to say I couldn't sleep, but you know, to take the money from the preschool parents for us to just basically send some papers. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like the preschool teachers aren't doing anything, because they certainly are, but it's not the same. It's not the same as what we're able to do with the upper grade kids. So we just made that decision that for our family's sake, a lot of them are financially strapped right now. It was the right thing to do to give them the money back. So,
and you guys probably already discussed that. You know, my daughter's a preschool teacher, and she's doing what she can. But I mean, it's a little bit different setup in Columbus City schools. But you know, like she said, if this goes into next year, how can she do that with kids that she's never, you know, they've never even met her? You know, that's crazy to think about. You know, that's I'm like I say, I'm sure you guys are looking at that issue, but that could be another issue if we aren't meeting as a, you know, if things don't go back to quote unquote normal school year next year. What are we going to do about preschool next year? You know, because you know, it's one thing to, like you say, with the kids that already know the teachers, but I can imagine, you know, the kids would be freaking out.
Yep.
yes.
The other part of that, we no longer have the morning care program. That was kind of a revenue generator, not a lot. Basically made a little bit of money, but we had to also pay the aides that monitored that. So we won't have that in there. We've had to refund some of our school fees, obviously, with having so many weeks off. Things like did you get a refund, Matt? You're muted.
I want 20%, right?
Yeah. Now, with one of the ones was with the home ec classes, or family and consumer science, was something that Jeff and I had a conversation about with Mrs. Seal in regards to, you know, they pay that money based on the foods and things that they're going to be making, and obviously they're not making any of those, nor have we had the expense. So we did kind of prorate that based on the number of days, and I let the two of them discuss that and decide what that should look like. So we are doing refunds there. We've been doing a lot of refund checks. We've had, you know, the state wrestling tickets, with state wrestling being canceled, and we've had that. We've had the thespian conference was canceled, so we've had that. There was something else with the thespians that we had to refund too. but just, we're trying to be cognizant of the fact that parents are in need of some of these funds, and it's not necessarily right for us to keep those if we're not following through with what was anticipated before this all happened. So it's kind of like Tom said, it's the right thing to do.
I wish that worked both ways. And hopefully we'll discuss it tonight with another group.
Okay. Looking at State Foundation, we're just down about 32,000. Like I said, it's anticipated that we should collect what we are going to collect for this year. But as Tom said, next year, our open enrollment could look different. Our community school deduction could look different. Our scholarships, all of that will have an impact. This will have an impact on our state funding, most likely for next year, but it's going to hit several areas potentially. So just got to keep an eye out for that. Other than that, nothing too much more on that. And then looking at the budget, we have the salaries are real close to where we're projecting. Our fringe benefits are running down. This is kind of a benefit at the moment, and this will continue to look that way. We don't have the bus drivers taking any additional trips, so we will save money on that. We should save money on any overtime at this point. There should be no overtime. So hopefully our salaries will come in way under projections until I update the forecast. But we're really hoping to see some significant savings in that just to help what's going to happen next year. Purchase services are down as well, both month to date and year to date. And I continue to see that just because of all the utilities and everything that we'll be saving on at this point. Supplies and materials are down just for the year at 76.88. Well, we're down for the month too, but just down slightly. But the teachers, again, we had to get some things ordered in anticipation of starting the year before, we closed. We have to be ready if we are, but we'll see what that looks like as well. Tom and I have already discussed that our budgets are probably going to get cut will get cut for next year at the building levels and just looking at that. But where we stand now, we should be saving on mileage because nobody's going anywhere. Tom's not having to drive roads or do any of that kind of stuff. So our mileage is going to be saving, and most likely starting out the year, we'll be saving. I anticipate too, just a heads up, and I kind of talked to somebody today at OASBO to get their feel for it too, but I don't see Capital Conference happening this year. So I don't know. I know it's in November, but we start getting the rooms and everything August, September, and if they don't have a ruling by then, I just don't know how they can put 10,000 people together in the convention center, especially if we're not back in school at that point or, depending. But so there's a lot of areas that I can see us saving on. I can also see the potential for people are getting very used to doing meetings like this. So I think there's going to be a lot of travel, especially for local meetings that Tom and I go to that, like our insurance consortium meeting, if it works to do it this way, it may work. The big group, maybe not, but I know. Huh?
So we'll find out next month. So.
Yeah. Well, and even going to NOECA, we've been doing anything that we've had. I'm on the operating committee for that and the finance committee for that. And we've done those like this. And I don't anticipate, for me, that's wonderful because that's miles I don't have to drive and time I don't have to take out of my day. If I can do it like this, I'm good with that. So I think we'll see some changes in that as well. And then
can I just say another potential savings that, and you brought up the insurance consortium, and nothing definite, but right now there's people are not going to the doctor, obviously, and we're not having elective things. So our insurance costs as of right now have really dramatically dropped off this quarter. So that may be somewhere else where, as a consortium, we may see some savings there too, so.
And then really nothing else super significant other than the county auditor fees are the biggest part of our other objects. So overall, we're under budget 462,000 for the month. So I will take it. I did not have any questions on the checks. And we did have some appropriation modifications. And those are on your list. I gotta have a ruler. Hold on. Let's see. 5,000, and that's in one of the principal's funds. And then other grants was 5,000. That was, I think that was for something Dean had, if I remember right. I did not bring my sheet that had it. And then the adjustments on the federal grant side, we did get some additional allocations of grant money, and we moved some of it into Title I and some of it into Title IV that we got in Title II. So that's why you have a negative in Title II. But we're trying to be creative in how we're spending those dollars and trying to get the most bang for our buck to help offset what we're currently doing. So. But that was just approved, and we'll see where we go from there. So that's all I have on that.
You don't have to answer this question now, but just something I was thinking about.
Okay.
You know, you're talking about some cost savings, which I think we all can relate to. And then you guys mentioned, you know, you're looking at 10 to 20% state budget cuts, closer to the 20%.
Correct.
And I mean, I don't hear, and like, again, you don't have to answer this question now. I don't hear enough savings to make up 20%. And then when, you know, our budget is what, 70% personnel, 65% personnel costs?
Closer, yeah, 70, closer to 70.
So if we have to make up a gap of money, is there we have to cut pay, right? I mean, am I thinking right?
Exactly right.
You're right.
So my next question, has there been any talk with administration, with employee units that they might have to take a cut in pay?
Well, that's something that we can discuss.
And it might not be a time to discuss it now. I'm just throwing it. It's the elephant in the room. And, you know, I mean, I know we all don't know, and it's unpredictable at this point, but yet, you know, I was talking to someone about someone else, you know, one of my philosophies is you got to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. You know, I don't know.
Well, and one of the things that, you know, we had set up that 070 fund for the building project fund. And John, you brought this up. One of the things we know that when we did the forecast in November, that our third year, we basically had enough for about a payroll left. Just a little over one payroll for that third year. We also did not have any of the money from the pipeline involved in that forecast at that point, because we didn't know what our dollars were going to be. However, that is something that right now I would recommend that we hang on to that and we don't move any of that money at this point, because depending what happens with the future and our state funding and how much we get cut, we may have to have that in that forecast to show that we can fund ourselves and not be put into fiscal caution, because that's really something that we don't want to have happen as well. So those pipeline dollars, although they're not nearly what they should be, and we are still working on that through our organizations, through OASBO, BASA, and OSBA, I know I'd mentioned at the last board meeting or the one before that there was a coalition trying to form of all the school districts to basically get some legislative changes made to hold the pipeline companies to their numbers and to not take that from us. That is still a work in progress. So hopefully we can make some headway with that and see where that goes. But for right now, my recommendation would be that we do not move any of that pipeline money out until we know more securely what our finances look like for the district.
Makes sense. My thought on that though is that, all along we said that, at least for now, while we're continuing to get the state funds, that we really shouldn't use those for general fund. And that, at the moment where we're at, even if the state cuts 20% next year, we're still going to have another payment this year for the pipeline. We're going to have another payment next year for the pipeline. So to keep, I feel my personal opinion is that if we just let this roll into the general fund, it's going to get lost and we're never going to use it for what we intended that to be used for.
Okay. And I accept that. And I think there's some additional conversation that we won't have regarding that, but not in this forum.
Well, a couple things. Do we know what percentage they paid? I heard that they made like a 47, 43%.
43%.
Okay. So we the rest is still up in the air.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. But fortunately, they did tender pay and paid what they felt they owed, because otherwise we'd have to pay them back in interest if they win.
Right.
So right now, what?
See how they do that? They make you think they're doing you a favor and they're really taking it out of your, you gotta love it.
Still amazes me that they're challenging the numbers that they gave the state. They're challenging their own numbers.
Tell you.
Well, it cost them more to get people to allow the pipeline to come in. And because they were running behind, it cost them additional. The value of the pipeline, and that's one of our arguments, is the value of the pipeline is how much it costs to put it in, not all the extra things that weren't part of that process that, can't be included in the actual cost of the pipeline itself. So hopefully, fingers crossed. I know they've got people who are, big attorneys and everything like that, and they don't live in the state. So, right now it's in the tax commissioner's hands at this point, but we can lobby and try to change some things legislatively. So hopefully we can make that happen. Okay. Item 7C is the authorization to enroll in the Ohio School Board Association Comp Management Program for the 2020-21 school year for our unemployment and workers' comp. And again, I'm very, very happy with them. They do a great job for us. And I would like to continue that relationship. And that's all I have.
And is there any break we'll get on insurance? I know for people who have cars, we're getting breaks on our auto insurance. Is there any fleet insurance or any rebates coming back that way since traffic's down and we aren't using buses?
I have not heard that, but it wouldn't surprise me if we do end up with something. I have not been informed of that. I just got the notification on the gas consortium yesterday or Friday. So I kind of anticipate, and I have an email into her to see about that. So
good.
Yeah. Because I know people are I haven't got it yet with my insurance though. Everybody else is getting it. Kind of concerns me, but.
Got mine.
Did the district get the money back from the Bureau of Workers' Comp from 2018?
Yeah, it's in April. Well, yeah.
So we did get that. I mean, that's one thing. I'm sure.
Yeah, was that 18? I gotta think, because ours are weird years. I just got like 5,000 Just last, I think I got that Friday too. So yes, we are getting that. I always have to email them and say, which year is this applying to? Because it's usually like, and for some reason, I feel like he said 2015, but maybe he said it's probably 18.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yes, we got a portion of that back. Plus we participate in the group retro program because that seems to do better for us. So we tend to get those bigger checks as well. Okay.
All right, I need a motion to approve the treasurer's report and 8A.
So moved.
No, not 8A. We didn't do 8A.
Is that
That's separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do the treasurer's report first then.
Make a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll.
I got Bill second, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, Mr. McLeister,
Yes.
Mr. Muthig,
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Betts,
Yes.
Mr. Shuhanik.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, and then I have item 8A, which is the approval of the award acceptance for Edison local schools to participate in the state school bus purchase program. Basically, I forget what my number was, 37,000, whatever that was. 35,761.88. Basically a program that they put together that for school districts that show based on their T reports, the age of our buses and that kind of stuff, who needs buses more. And we were one of them. So if I can get $35,000 towards the purchase of an $85,000 bus, I want it. So we have to submit this to them to get approval. So
moved.
All right, I have a motion, second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
right, Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. McLeister,
Yes.
Mr. Muthig,
Yes.
Mr. Betts,
Yes.
Mr. Shuhanik.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
All right. Did we need to go, if we were going to discuss any supplementals, were we going to go into executive?
Yes.
Tom, you're on mute.
Can't hear Tom.
There you go.
My wife wishes she could do that, right?
I do it all the time.
I said,
Tell her to
Yes,
join
we
this. Tell her to join this meeting.
there you go. She may be watching it for all I know on YouTube. So, yes, we need to go into executive session. I didn't know if you wanted to go with any additional board comments prior to that or not. And what we'll do, just so I have another meeting invitation ready to send you here. I didn't want to send it early so there wasn't confusion on which one to log into, that I'm going to send you all for the executive session. So we'll all join into that one. And then Rob, if I text you when we come out of executive session, can you just get us back on YouTube for closing the meeting? Okay, you're muted. Rob, you're muted.
There it goes. Did it go through?
Yeah.
Okay. I should be able to. I've never done it where it's a back-to-back same session. So that would be a quick cost.
We do not anticipate any board action after the executive session. But I'll text you when we come out of executive session and we'll give it a shot. We'll all have to come back to this one and log in to when we come out of executive session to close the meeting. So.
Correct.
Wow, you're testing my technical savvy. Woo!
So we're going to go to another hangout, you're saying?
Yeah.
I am going to send you right now. I am sending you all an email or an invitation to another